Thank you. Good morning. Today is Wednesday, January 25th, and this is the time and place for a special meeting of the Nevada Gaming Control Board. Madam Secretary, has our agenda been posted in accordance with open meeting law?
Yes, it has.
Madam Secretary, let's proceed with public comments.
This item is placed on the agenda to give the public an opportunity to comment on gaming-related matters.
Anyone wishing to make a public comment, please step forward to the podium. Is there anyone in Carson City? Okay, seeing no one, that will close our public comment section.
There's background noise.
George Assad is a judge out of Vegas.
Madam Secretary, I believe that brings us to our special agenda item. Please read that item into the record.
This item is the applications of the Fred Dunn 1991 number 3 life interest settlement, the Fred Dunn 1991 number 1 life interest settlement, the F Dunn 2007 family discretionary settlement, the Peter Eric Dunn 1991 number 4 life interest settlement, the Peter Eric Dunn 1991 number 1 life interest settlement, and the P.E. Dunn 2007 family discretionary settlement for registration as a holding company and for finding of suitability as a trustee and or beneficiary as noted on the agenda. It is also the applications of Betfred Group Limited for registration as an intermediary company and for finding of suitability as the 100% shareholder of Light Catch Limited. It is also the applications of Light Catch Limited for registration as an intermediary company and for finding of suitability as the 100% shareholder of Betfred International Holdings Limited. You also have the applications of Betfred International Holdings Limited for registration as an intermediary company and for finding of suitability as the 100% member of Betfred USA Sports LLC. It is also the applications of Betfred USA Sports LLC for registration as an intermediary company and for finding of suitability as the 100% member of Betfred USA Sports 2 LLC. You also have the applications of Betfred USA Sports 2 LLC for registration as an intermediary company and for licensure as the 100% member of Betfred Sports Nevada LLC. It is also the application of Mohegan Tribal Gaming Authority doing business as Mohegan Gaming and Entertainment for an amendment to their order of registration. You also have the application of MGNV LLC doing business as Mohegan Sun Casino Las Vegas for the addition of a racebook, sports pool, and off-track pari-mutuel race wagering, and the application of Betfred Sports Nevada LLC for licensure as a key employee as noted on the agenda. You also have the application of Betfred Sports Nevada LLC to receive a percentage of gaming revenue from the racebook and sports pool, including off-track pari-mutuel race wagering, operated by MGNV LLC, doing business as Mohegan Sun Casino, Las Vegas. You also have the applications of Fred Dunn, Peter Eric Dunn, Paula Dunn-Orell, Jacqueline Siddons, Peter Daniel Dunn, Leah Dunn Jackson, Deborah Lyon, Daniel Dunn, Mark Stebbings, Nicola Barr, Brian Bennett, and Louis D'Amico for finding of suitability as a manager, key executive, key employee, shareholder, director, and or officer as noted on the agenda. Finally, for board consideration only, you have the applications of Anthony Comer, Mark Comer, and Audrey Cox for registration as a minority equity interest holder of Betfred Group Limited as noted on the agenda.
Welcome. Please state your name for the record.
Chair Watkins, Member Katsaros, Madam Secretary. My name is Mark Rubenstein of the law firm of Reed, Rubenstein, and Bogatz. I appear today on this item on behalf of the Mohegan Tribal Gaming Authority and its non-restricted gaming licensee, MGNV LLC, doing business as Mohegan Sun Casino, Las Vegas. Before I kick off our brief presentation, I'd like to first thank you for scheduling this special meeting and accommodating everyone who had to travel from afar to make just one long trip to Las Vegas for both the board and commission meetings. It's very appreciated. The additional time also allowed us to work with staff to address to everybody's satisfaction some issues that arose toward the end of this long journey, including the draft conditions you have before you on the approval sought by Mohegan Sun Casino. I'd also like to commend staff for their fine work on this item, and in particular call out Supervisor Matt Doyle, Deputy Chief Russell Teggio, and Chief Hoffman of the Investigations Division, and Chief Pergerson of the Enforcement Division. Finally, I'd like to recognize and thank Board Member Katsaros for all his dedication and work these last 4 years. It's really been a pleasure working with you, and I wish you nothing but success in your future endeavors. What we would propose to do with this item, if there are no objections, is to begin with a brief presentation by Joe Hassan on behalf of the Mohegan applicants. Joe, as you know, is the Casino General Manager of the Mohegan Sun Casino Las Vegas. After Joe speaks and answers any questions you may have of Mohegan, he will turn the podium over to Stan Johnson, outside gaming counsel for the Betfred entities, who will introduce the Betfred representatives here today and lead their presentation. Following the Betfred presentation, it is my intent to return to the podium to review with you the proposed conditions and the 5th revised order of registration for the Mohegan Tribal Gaming Authority.
Hey, I don't have any objections. Please proceed.
Great. Hearing no objection, I will now ask Mr. Hassan to come to the podium. Thank you.
Chairwoman Watkins, Member Castellanos, my pleasure to be here today. Joe Hassan, General Manager of Mohegan Sun Casino Las Vegas. That's also known as MGNV LLC. Long time coming. We're excited to have the opportunity today, and we're pleased to have worked with Investigations Division staff, particularly Matt Doyle, who was very helpful to my office in terms of propelling us through what Mohegan needed to find its way through in order to reach today. Again, very thankful for that. Thank you, of course, for the opportunity for this special meeting as well. In early 2020, Mohegan's business and its principals commenced working closely with Betfred, and we, of course, looked forward to as speedy a journey as we could find our way to what we now arrive at today. Certainly, COVID-19, long distances, and any other number of challenges found their way into a complex, critical path. But nonetheless, I'm very pleased that the day has arrived because I look forward to fulfilling the build out of Mohegan Sun Casino Las Vegas, which of course should include, with today's blessings and tomorrow's blessings, the opportunity to open up a sportsbook. It's an essential ingredient, of course, given that sports betting is explosive in terms of its growth and its opportunities, not just in Nevada, but nationwide and frankly worldwide. And we look forward to bringing Betfred's international brand to the citizens of Nevada and certainly to bear with Mohegan's opportunities that are ahead of us in Las Vegas. Importantly today, what I want to make sure that the board hears directly from me is that we understand at Mohegan that we are the licensee, and Betfred, in its capacity as a manager working for the licensee, puts the obligation both on me personally and professionally and on the rest of my executive team to do all the things that are necessary to ensure compliance with the state's expectation, this board's expectations, and all the obligations that we have as a unrestricted licensee to do the things that are necessary to maintain good order and suitability of the book.
I appreciate your recognition of that understanding.
Please to state that on the record. No one takes that closer to heart than I do. I realize that I hold a privileged position in the great state of Nevada, and I have for a long time. And I recognize the obligations that come with that. And I'm here to state that onto the record today.
Thank you.
I want you to also have an opportunity to hear from me the organizational structure such that Betfred, in its anticipated capacity as a key employee entity of Mohegan, has a reporting relationship to me. Many of the people that you'll be introduced to in the next few minutes also understand that, having heard it from me, in addition to their own personal and professional understanding of the obligations. And in the time that I've had to work over the protracted period of time that arrives today, I've had the good fortune to be in direct contact with those people that will have that professional relationship with me and to me in my capacity as the general manager. So in addition to the 9 direct reports that I manage today, I will have the manager of the sportsbook with a direct relationship to me, and through the chief operating officer of Betfred in the US, his team and his office has a direct relationship to me organizationally. It's spelled out both in the organizational chart and in our internal control submission. And again, I wanted to state that on the record so that the members of the board had the opportunity to hear from me with whatever passion I can bring to that, my understanding of that, and my acknowledgement of the obligations and the responsibilities that I have. With all that said, again, I look forward to what today and tomorrow hopefully will bring, and it's my pleasure to turn it over today to Stan Johnson of Betfred's outside counsel. Of course, I'm available for questions and comments at any time.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any questions at this time. Member Casaros, anything?
I don't either, but I do recognize your passion. I remember the exchanges we had during COVID, frankly, and it was I could feel your desire to comply and your understanding of the privilege license that you have here and so forth. So again, I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your memory of that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Stan
Thank you.
Johnson.
Good morning, Chair Watkins, Member Katsaros. Happy to be with you here this morning. With me is also, Randall Sayer, who is a consultant to the applicants, has been very key in this whole application process. Thank him for his work and dedication in this. As I said, I'm with the law firm of Cohen Johnson, and it is my honor to introduce this item, which represents a process that began more than 2 years ago. With Betfred applications and the other applicants who have submitted those applications for suitability as a key employee and to participate in the management of the race and sports book located at Mohegan Sun Casino. With your approval, this would enable one of the largest sports betting companies in the United Kingdom, as well as the world, to initially enter the Nevada market. In addition, there are a number of applicants, representatives, and employees here today that I will introduce a little later. This application process was initiated shortly after the COVID-19 pandemic began, and this unprecedented challenge, combined with the size and international scope of the Betfred Group, presented a very challenging environment through which this investigation had to proceed. I would first like to recognize the great efforts and diligence of the investigative teams. I can affirmably state that being involved with Betfred in licensing in other jurisdictions, the process here in Nevada is truly the standard of the industry. And it was frankly a learning experience for everyone involved. Throughout the entire process, the board staff has been professional, attentive, extremely thorough, and I would like to thank also members of the Betfred own compliance and legal team who took primary responsibility for seeing to it that all the investigators' requests were timely and completely answered. Stephen Lundgren, who is here today, is in-house counsel of the Betfred Group, and Paul Krzenik, head of corporate finance for Betfred Group, is also here. I want to especially thank the chair and the board for allowing this special board hearing to accommodate Betfred and all the applicants and others that had to travel from the United Kingdom to be here in Las Vegas. We recognize that this puts an additional burden on the board, investigators, and staff, and we truly are appreciative of this. I would also like to thank the board for the waiver of the appearances of the Doan children, which we greatly appreciate because that would have added a lot of additional time and expense and travel for those applicants. If it suits the chair, we have an affirmative presentation that we would like to make. And I'll begin first with introducing the applicants, have them come forward, just briefly introduce themselves and tell you briefly a little bit about themselves that pleases the board.
Absolutely. Go ahead and proceed.
Okay. First, I'd like to have Fred Doan, shareholder, trustee, and director of Betfred Group, come up, introduce himself, and briefly tell a little bit about himself.
Yeah. Good morning, and thank you for listening to us this morning, Madam Chairman, Mr. Casares. I don't know where to start with this one because I am the Fred in Betfred. Later, I'd like to go through the Betfred story with you. If you want to listen to me on it, I'd be proud to talk to you about it.
Mr. Dunn, can you lean into your microphone a little
I'm
bit?
sorry,
I'm having a bit of trouble hearing you.
Okay.
Did you ask a question? I'm sorry.
I'd like to go through my biography and talk to you later about it and expand on the Betfred story, if that's okay.
Okay, yes, please proceed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I'd love to hear that.
That'll be part of the firm presentation.
Okay.
This is just to introduce the applicants
Understood.
Next, Peter Eric Dome, shareholder and trustee.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm just the brother of Betfred.
Just. Is that all?
Yeah. And we started the business many, many years ago with one shop. And now we're here in Las Vegas. So, you know, we've done okay over the years. It's been a tough ride. It's been a really good ride, but we still speak. We're still partners. And we've been shareholders and partners in all our businesses. Everything we split. I won't say down the middle, but we split. And he runs the betting side. I run the employment side, the Peninsula side. So that's Peter Dome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next, Joanne Whitaker, who is the CEO of Betfred Group.
Good morning. I've worked with Fred for over 20 years now. I started our working relationship just over 20 years ago, running the IT department at Betfred when there was 200 shops, long time ago. I went on to establish my own businesses, which Fred backed me in, working in financial services in an industry regulated by the FCA. I worked with Fred to establish his family office, overseeing all of his wider business interests, which we set up 3 or 4 years ago. And then Fred offered me the opportunity to come into Betfred as CEO and take over the reins from him. So we work really closely together. But I'm looking forward to speaking to you today.
Okay, and that was rather recent, right?
April 21.
Okay.
Feels like forever ago.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Next, Nicola Barr, CFO of Betfred Group.
Chair Watkins, member Katsaharas, very nice to meet you. I'm Nicola Barr, Group CFO at Betfred. I qualified as a chartered accountant in 2002 in a small firm of accountants in Liverpool, United Kingdom. And after that, in 2004, I moved into the betting and gaming industry and worked for a company called Stanley Leisure PLC. Following that, in 2006, I moved to Betfred, and I've been at Betfred for the last 17 years and CFO for the last 8 years.
Thank you.
Next, Mark Stebbins, COO of Betfred Group.
Good morning, Chair Watkins, Member Casares. My name is Mark Stebbings, the Group COO. I've been in the industry for almost 30 years, joined Betfred in 1994, held several roles within the company, most notably leading the UK property development team for a number of years, been responsible for growing the retail footprint we have in the UK, before being appointed the Retail Managing Director in 2014, and finally to my current role, Group COO, in 2019, with the responsibility of developing and launching Betfred in the USA.
Okay, thank you.
Next, Brian Bennett, COO of US Operations.
Good morning, Chair Watkins, Member Katsoros. My name is Brian Bennett. I'm the COO of Betfred USA. I'm responsible for all Betfred operations here in the United States. I joined Betfred in November 1st, 2019. And prior to that, I was the Senior Vice President of Interactive at AGS, local slot machine developer here in Las Vegas. And prior to that, worked for various startups in the free-to-play gaming space, consumer internet, and then we go way back in the Bay Area. But I've been in the gaming industry, the casino gaming industry, for almost 8 years.
Thank you.
Next, Lou D'Amico, Head of US Trading.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here today. My name is Lou D'Amico. I am Vice President of Racing Sports for Betfred. Was hired in August of 2019. But I have a history here in Las Vegas. I've been here going on 48 years, and I've worked in many of the racing sports books here in Las Vegas. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may
Mr.
have.
D'Amico, how did they convince you to come out of retirement?
That was kind of a tough thing to do. I was retired probably for almost 10 years, watching grandchildren and raising them, and then received a call and when my grandchildren and son and his wife moved away back in 2017, sometimes you kind of want to do something again. And I was very fortunate that Mr. Stephen Crystal reached out to me because I did work for Stephen when I opened up the Racing Sports Book at the Plaza for Barrett Gaming. And he said, "Do you ever hear of the company Betfred?" I says, "No." But I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Stebbins and the people from Betfred during, I believe, one of the conventions that were here in town maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And that's how we started. And I'm just happy to be working for them. They're a terrific company.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
There are a number of applicants that aren't here this morning, and those were mentioned in the agenda item, but for the record, I'll note that Jacqueline Ann Siddons, beneficiary and minority interest holder, Peter Daniel Doan, beneficiary minor interest holder, Nicola Ann Doan Orell, beneficiary and member minority interest holder, Leanne Doan Jackson, beneficiary and minor interest holder, Daniel Peter Doan, beneficiary and minor interest holder, and Deborah Ann Lyon, beneficiary and minority interest holder. Also, as mentioned, there are some minority interest holders that also their appearances were waived this morning. Anthony David Comber, Mark Andrew Comber, and Audrey Cox, all minority interest holders. Finally, we have some individuals that are not applicants, but they're here today, and I'd just like to mention them. We have Cynthia Hayes, Vice President of Compliance for Betfred Sports. She's right there. A.G. Burnett, Chair of the U.S. Compliance Committee. Steve, as I mentioned previously, Stephen Lundgren, who is the in-house counsel for Betfred Group. Right there. And Paul Krasanik, Head of Corporate Finance for Betfred Group, who's right there. The presentation we'd like to do this morning will give you an overview of the Doan family, an overview of Betfred and its brand, its recent growth developments, and Betfred's operations in the U.S. as well as Nevada. Finally, we'll address Betfred's approach to compliance, diversity, and charitable efforts. I will now introduce the members of the Betfred team that will guide us through the remainder of the presentation. Is the presentation going to be on this screen? Okay.
Are we ready to start?
Well, first slide we can bring up. Okay. So initially, Fred Doan, who you heard from, who is of course the director of Betfred Group, will provide an overview of the Doan family. He'll give you more detail about the Doan family and their history and work in the gaming space. Following Fred Doan, Joanne Whitaker, who you've met, will give an overview of Betfred, its recent growth developments, and introduce a short video to give an additional overview of Betfred and its history. Ms. Whitaker will then introduce Betfred's leadership team and other Betfred Group topics. Following Joanne Whitaker, Mark Stebbins will talk about the Betfred Sports USA and its subsidiaries, and give a brief overview of the expansion of Betfred USA in the U.S. Finally, Brian Bennett will then discuss Betfred's future plans for the state of Nevada and our current corporate partnerships. So let's go to can we go to the next slide?
The control's right in front of you.
Oh.
There is a little bit delay on.
Okay. So this is the agenda. As I said, Fred will talk about the Doan family introduction, Betfred overview and recent growth developments. Then we'll talk about Betfred's U.S. footprint and operations and the Nevada overview. So with that, I'd like to call or have Fred Doan come up and discuss the Doan family history.
Hi.
We started the business in 1967, but before that, if I bore you too much, tell me to shut up and I'll sit down. I first came in the industry in 1960 as a very young man, obviously. In 67, I struck out on my own with my brother Peter. We came from a poor working class family on one of the outskirts of Manchester, but we were totally enthusiastic with what we were doing. We never wanted to build an empire. That was not the object. The object of the siting on our own was to feed a family, no more than that. But we found success and we got the bug and we started working hard. We really did work hard. And the journey's been fantastic, and I wish I could do the journey again. In 1967, we got the first license and we opened one small shop in a place called Salford, where we came from. And we opened the first bank account with £75, and that was it. If it had gone against us, that was us done. But we were experienced in the business, and from there, we slowly expanded. And then in the 80s, we put a development team together. We went right throughout the UK doing new applications and also doing purchases. We were very successful at that. And then we moved along till 2011, where we managed to buy the totalisator board from the UK government. It was probably the worst recession of all time, financial recession from 2008 to 2008, as you know, about the collapse of the financial world. But because of our reputation with banks, it was quite easy to raise the money. We paid 265 million to the UK government. We had massive competition at the beginning of the process. More than 20 companies applied to buy the tote. We managed to get it. We made a big success out of that. On the back of the Betfred success, it has managed to spawn other companies. I mean, Peter will tell you more about one of our biggest companies, a company called Peninsula Business Services, which employs 2,000 people worldwide in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and Ireland. But I'll let Peter go into that. We've also formed construction companies, development companies, 2 insurance companies, and we're still totally interested in business. But this is my baby. This is where it all started. This is my love. I think the family, a very honourable family, and our word is our bonding bookmaking, and what we say is what we deliver for people. Recently, over the last year, we expanded into South Africa, where we managed to buy 65 shops off the administrator, shops that were broken, and we're putting them right slowly. It was a broken business, but we're getting there with it. And we managed to buy the majority percentage in the biggest lottery company in South Africa. And I'm really pleased with the way it's going. We've put our foot into the US, and again, I won't go into that too much because Mark Stebbins will tell you much more about it than I could. But we are here. We're here to look after people, both our customers and our staff, because I believe that all businesses are the same. It's the people who run the business that make the difference. And we are here to look after and give a good deal to people. Would you like me to say anything further?
Not at this time. Member Casaros?
Yeah, just a little bit going back to the history. So again, I watched a little bit of a documentary. I've got our materials here. So our investigators obviously do a very thorough job, as you have found out.
Yeah.
What was the point in time when you decided I wanted to get into sports betting in I think your father had already been
my dad,
delving in that.
Yeah, my dad was in the business. I left school at 15. My education wasn't fantastic. I left at 15 and I went into an engineering company to become a draftsman. And I was probably the worst draftsman God ever put on earth. I hated it. I was bored with it. And after 6 months of being in it, I went into betting. Not really because I was interested in betting, but I needed a job. And I did it. And without being too modest, I was good. And I still love the business, and I still think about and talk to my traders every day, and I still get a big kick out of it.
I mean, at the beginning, though, there wasn't any computerized systems to set sporting lines, prices, odds, etc.
Yeah.
So how were you going about doing that on your own when you jumped right into it?
There wasn't even calculators in those days, never mind computers. And we did
abacus.
We didn't even use them. It all came from here. If you ask me odds now, I can convert them to a percentage for you, and I don't know how I do it, but it's just there.
Amazing. And was it horse racing primarily at that point?
90% of the business in those days was horse racing. The other 10% was football. We just entered the business, and we had foot and mouth disease in England. It came from cows, but it spread to horses. But within 6 months of being in the business, racing was closed down. And all the other bookmakers around there, they'd been in the business for years and had plenty of cash to live on. We had no choice. We opened up, and Afternoon Greyhounds was in its infancy. We stayed open, and the other bookmakers said, "How are you doing with it? Are you busy?" We were full. Our shops were cram-packed, and we'd said to them, "Very, very quiet. It's not worth doing." So we survived. And it's been, I wish I could do it all over again. I don't think I'd do much different. But, we live with our bond. And that's what I say to you. I try to get that as much as I can to you. That what we say we do, and we deliver.
And in your opening, we kind of jumped from that early period to 2011. In between that time, you did mention most of the shops, well, you're either buying them or sometimes you're building them or finding new spaces.
Yeah.
At this point in time, I think you're around 1,500, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So there was a growth period, obviously. Yeah. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, I put a team together of 6 or 7 guys, all from what I call the shop floor. We brought them all in. There'd been cashiers, managers, and then we promoted them. And we'd go around the country. We'd spend days away from home, staying in hotels overnight and tramping the course and finding it. We'd go out in our jeans and our T-shirts because we didn't want to be recognised by the opposition, because in England we were late into it because some of the big firms were already there. The William Hills, the Ladbrokes, the Corals, Ladbrokes Hills Corals, they were there. And wherever we went in the town was already a bookmaker there. So you had to prove demand. But we put a good legal team together, but we put good guys who'd been brought up in the industry. And at our peak, we were opening 80 shops a year. It was hard going. And we did it all with our own cash because we were struggling with banks. Banks didn't want to know us because I think because we came from the wrong side of the track, and we didn't have anything behind us. We just had to do it ourselves.
I mean, at a certain point, I think there was somewhere 10,000 betting shops in the UK, give or take.
That's right. There was 10,000. You know more than me. Yeah, there was 10,000 betting shops, and it's now reduced to about 6,000 because of legislation that came in. We have machines in our shops that reduce the stakes on these machines, and it's over the last 2 years, 2,000 shops have closed down.
I don't know more than you. I spent some time there though, but I was leading to that. So the FOBTs, then, have you limited within the shops? The max bet limits were reduced.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of shops have closed.
Yeah.
Within those shops, have you had to remove machines, or you were able to keep the same number?
Well, what happened? You had a maximum of 4 machines. That's all you were allowed, and the maximum stakes you could play for was £100 a spin. And they reduced the £100 a spin to £2 a spin, and it's quite devastating what happened there. So we've had to at our peak, we were trading 1,650 shops. We're down to 1,400 shops now. It's not been good. People have lost jobs, but we're still there. We're still surviving.
I guess just anecdotally, it would seem that the number that have shrunk for you would be less percentage wise than some of the others, because I heard of some bigger numbers.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, we stayed with quality shops. So, we've got a long way to go before we have to close anymore. But I think we're probably the strongest bookmaker in retail in the UK. Online, we're still catching up. With our online business, we're operating with over 200 people operating out of Gibraltar. And that is still growing, that business. It seems to be going that way. But I do believe that betting shops in the UK have got a 10 to 15 year life at least in them. And that is still my love for shops.
No, I've spent time in a bunch of different ones. You could see the different feel, or just going into them, you could feel the difference between company A versus company B and company C sometimes. So I could see where you're able to carve out that market for the benefit of Betfred.
With the shops, what you don't get online, you don't get the social aspect that you get in shops. You get people going in the shops, meet the friends every day, have a coffee, play and most people in the UK are responsible. Not many people get into trouble. I believe that the problem gamblers that we have in our country is a very small percentage, and we do our very, very best to look after them with guidance. Joanne can tell you much more about that than I can. But I love the social side of our shops. It's a community.
Okay. Thank you. I didn't have anything further on that, but I wanted to get some of that on the record because I find it fascinating, frankly.
Okay.
You said a minute ago you didn't set out to build an empire. So
I was never there.
Well, oops, you did it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, madam.
Thanks. Go ahead and proceed, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. So next, we'll have Joanne Whitaker come up and talk a little bit about the Betfred overview, recent growth developments. Also introduce a short video. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we've got a short video which just gives a bit of a flavour for the Betfred story. If we're able to play that.
Please.
You want a second?
Oh, he's in.
Oh, okay.
Hold on a second, please. I apologize, the audio's not going to come through.
This is a family. It feels like family.
An enthusiasm that is infectious about the gaming business.
Touchdown!
The brand in a business that bases everything it does on people and on trust.
It was a real family affair. I had £200 on England at 8-1 to win the World Cup, and it was a great result for England. It was a great result for Betfred.
He's going to do it. Frankie Dettori, 7 out of 7. It's a history maker.
£40 million were lost by bookmakers. Moved the stock market. Well, it was mental.
It's the first time in 30 years of bookmaking that I've ever paid before the results in.
It was probably worth millions and millions to us in marketing. At our peak, we were all opening 80 new licenses a year. I mean, it was go in them days. I had my chance to buy a quarter of United for 250 grand. Do I regret it? No, because I don't live on regret.
If he likes something, he closes, and when he shakes your hand, the deal's done. And for that, I'll always respect him.
When he bought the tote, he got the tote out of a lot of trouble.
Fred is a winner.
And they're away. Her Royal Highness, the Princess Royal, accompanied by Mr. Fred Doan.
Oh, Barry Hood.
Welcome back to Chum.
4 to 5, you can have it.
Oh, they're off.
Thank you for that presentation.
No problem.
Now can we go back to the?
Sorry.
Real quick follow-up. I forgot to ask about the $500,000 or £500,000 payout. Was that meant to be a marketing
The
stunt?
Manchester United.
Or just was a happy
Fred, you're better to
sort of
Yeah.
coincidence that you got a lot of good marketing out of that?
Part of it was stupidity. It wasn't for marketing. Peter and I are Manchester United fans, and United went 11 points clear. I didn't believe they could lose the championship. We lost it, and I got hammered by the press. I got hammered by the manager of Manchester United. Why did you do such a stupid thing? But the publicity we got out went worldwide. In 2 weeks, I did 53 interviews on radio, TV, newspapers worldwide, and it put us on the map. But it was luck.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fred has covered most of the details on this slide. It's his story, it's Peter's story. From my point of view, I would summarise the Betfred story by saying we're a proud, family-owned organisation. We tie back to our family values in most things that we do. We are one of the world's largest independent bookmakers, and we're proud to be independent. These guys are never selling. We are one of the UK's most recognisable brands, and we're at a really exciting point in our journey. So we've moved into the US and South Africa at the same time. You know, we don't stand still. It's really exciting for us. We love new opportunities. We'd never stand still. We're in the process of developing our new technology platform, which will be really exciting for us as a global business. So we'll have proprietary technology that will be live in the UK by the end of this year and ready to roll out globally. Probably Q3 next year, not quite sure, ready to commit to that. I think Q3 next year. And that will give us real leverage in this market, especially.
So the bet management system you're utilizing right now is not owned by you. It's third party.
No, it's third party.
In the UK.
No, it's you. Mark will be able to cover
Okay,
that
great.
specifically. We have 2 suppliers in the US, but it's not proprietary technology today. It will be next year. Sorry. You have now met the leadership team. This is the Betfred group structure. So there's Fred as group chairman, myself as group CEO, Mark, who'll be talking to you shortly about the US as group COO, and Nicola, my colleague, is our group CFO. We've provided a high-level summary here of our group financials. I think the numbers themselves demonstrate the scale of our business, and we're on track this year to achieve the 132 million EBITDA. As a very successful family, philanthropy is extremely important to the family and both to our organisation. We've highlighted some recent examples of charitable giving on the slide, but you'll see it's important for us to support our local communities in the territories that we operate. Both Betfred and Peninsula have recently donated to the Children's Hospital for a specific brain scanner that the hospital need to make a big difference to young children's life and enable them to be scanned during operations. I don't really know much more technical information than that. Since we've been working in South Africa, we've been supporting the local communities there. The campaign that we've just launched is that we're paying for breast cancer operations for family members that are put forward by the public. So that's a really big campaign for us in the Western Cape, something we're really proud of. The Don't family themselves, Fred recently built a youth zone. A youth zone is a mammoth youth club in the poorest part of Manchester, and the figures of detriment there for young people are the highest in the UK. So that's having a real impact every day. And following the success of that, he's just committed 8 million to build another one in another part of Manchester. Again, really high levels of deprivation. My colleague Brian, when he's talking about the state of Nevada, will be able to give you some information about our plans for this state, but it is important that we give back where our businesses are.
I'm sorry, what did you say about Nevada?
My colleague Brian will be able to cover our plans for Nevada.
Okay, that was my next question.
Yes,
I'm glad
don't
to
worry.
hear that.
Brian will cover it. Fred has covered some of our international growth. So my colleague Mark will be talking in detail about the US, but we are live today in 9 states. South Africa, we've completed 2 acquisitions in the last 18 months. One, as Fred covered, one of the largest lottery businesses, and then Betfred South Africa, which consists of betting shops and an online business. We only operate in regulated territories. So both of these highly regulated, as you're aware, for the US. South Africa as well. We're under probably 5 different gambling boards in South Africa. Each area has its own board with its own sets of rules and regulations. So it's important that we comply and understand the regulations in each territory within in South Africa, as well as in the US, which historically Betfred has been quite segmented by division, alongside the family businesses and other investments managed very informally by Fred himself. After the passing of Fred's wife 4 or 5 years ago, Fred recognised that he wasn't going to live forever and that we need to formalise the informal relationships which he had with all of his investments. Myself, Fred, and Paul, my colleague, we've worked together over the last 3 or 4 years to establish the Don't Family Office. It's been a journey that we've been on to understand what all of our investments are, how they operate, and formalise the reporting methods that they have today. They will always continue to report directly to Fred, update Fred, and Fred will continue to be involved. But with the Don't Family Office, we've put more structure, so we get regular reporting, we meet regularly with them, and we can ensure that we understand what's going on in each business. As I've already said, alongside this work, Fred then asked me to take over the role of CEO. And this was specifically looking at my experience working with the FCA in a regulated environment to look at how we can bring Betfred forward and deal with the challenges that we've seen through operating in so many territories and remove this segmentation so that we're looking at everything as a whole. It's my belief that the non-disclosure that we have seen as part of this Nevada application process was a symptom of the lack of structure, governance and oversight and the informality in the way Fred managed his businesses. I'm confident with the structure that we have today, this could not happen again. I've given a chart here, sorry. This is just highlighting, so each division still does have an independent compliance function because each division has completely different rules that it needs to comply with that are specific to that territory. We now have independent compliance committees within each business. And then at a group level, I lead a group compliance committee, which brings together all of these parties. With my experience and with me being part of the Don't Family Office, I also have the awareness of what's going on in the rest of the group. Well, the non-group family investments.
How was it structured? My apologies. How was it structured previously?
Everything was just going into Fred. So Fred was the CEO of Betfred, and Fred was informally meeting with all of the other organisations, but we just didn't have that cross collaboration and making sure that there was some centralisation and governance of the overall structure.
Okay.
So this is just giving clear reporting lines. We understand everything that's going on within the whole environment, and we've removed that segmentation.
Now we'll have Mark Stebbins talk about the U.S.
Thank you.
Betfred's journey into the US sports wagering marketplace started in late 2018. We began to evaluate if there was an opportunity to utilize our experience and expertise in the growing US sports wagering market. We decided there was an opportunity and immediately started looking for market access opportunities as states legalize sports wagering. As we stand here today, we have live operations in 9 states, and we have a number of other market access agreements in place for states which are pending legislation. Slide 15, please. I won't go through the slide in total, but just some highlights. Betfred USA Sports was born in June 2019 here in Nevada. Signed our first market access agreement in Iowa in July 2019. In November 2019, we opened our US headquarters here in Las Vegas, and we took our first US wager at the end of January 2020 in the Grand Falls Casino in Iowa. Excellent. We've built, in our view, an experienced US-based leadership team headed by Brian Bennett, who you will hear from after myself, Cynthia Hayes, our VP of Compliance, Lou D'Amico, and Ivan Sofron. Next slide. As part of our growth in the US, we've embraced the US compliance culture. We launched the Betfred USA Compliance Committee in February 2022, and since May 2022, AG Burnett has been retained as the independent member of our committee and also serves as our chair.
Now we'll have Brian Bennett come up and talk about Nevada specifically.
Thank you.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
Mark gave you a good overview of our U.S. operations, how we're approaching the United States, how we're approaching various states. I want to talk specifically about what we're doing here in Nevada and more specifically here in Las Vegas. First and foremost, Las Vegas is our headquarters. When we were looking to establish U.S. headquarters, Las Vegas was really the only option on the table. We felt like as a UK-based company coming into the United States, we needed to be in the gaming capital of the country, and that's where we are here in Las Vegas. So we set up our headquarters here. I joined the company on November 1st, 2019. We opened our office here in Las Vegas shortly thereafter with a handful of employees, and we've since grown that operation to 80 total, a little over 80 total U.S. employees, 70 of which are local here to Las Vegas. Based on the current scaling of the business, different states we're going to be launching, and just rolling out various new products, we believe that we will be at 90 to 100 employees here in Las Vegas by the end of the calendar year. So now speaking specifically about kind of why we're here today, and that's setting up our first Betfred Sportsbook here in Las Vegas. Obviously, you've heard from Mr. Hassan about our relationship with Mohegan and how we're approaching this. We will be managing the sportsbook, but obviously Mohegan is the licensed operator. You previously heard from Virgin. Just a quick refresher. Obviously, opened in spring of 2021. 4,500, or it's a fully casino and resort. Lots of entertainment options, dining options, and things of that nature. Then, of course, the casino is managed by Mohegan Sun. 60,000 square foot of gaming floor, 550 plus electronic gaming machines, 45 table games, and then hopefully after the next couple of days, plans to open a state-of-the-art sports book. The sports book has already been built. It's small but mighty, so it's roughly 1,300 square feet. Can seat up to 100 guests. State-of-the-art video wall, and 4 betting counters, and plans for 2 self-serve kiosks. But I think, I want to wrap up by just talking about the sort of the positive impact plan that Betfred is looking to have here in the state of Nevada, and again, more specifically here in Las Vegas. As I mentioned, we went investing in Las Vegas is important to us. We went from 0 employees to almost 70 with additional headcount planned. Total U.S. payroll here in Las Vegas is just over $4 million annually. We anticipate that scaling as we add new employees as we scale the business. We've already grown significantly. As I mentioned, going up to 70 employees, we've already outgrown our first office. So we moved into a new USA headquarters in May of 2022, into a 12,000 square foot office space at the corner of Decatur and Harmon, with ample opportunity to continue growing in that particular space. And then, of course, we really kind of fashion ourselves at Betfred. The way we're trying to carve ourselves away or set ourselves away from the competition is to be local. That's how we've done that in every state and every market we've gone into. That's equally important here in Las Vegas. And what that typically means is sponsoring local sports teams, working with local media partnerships, and feeling like you're investing in the community. And of course, here in Las Vegas, it doesn't get any more local, and from a sports perspective, than the Golden Knights. And we are already in active conversations to announce a partnership with Golden Knights and the Silver Knights, provided we have a positive outcome for the next couple of days here, obviously. And then last but not least, I think it's clear to this point from the information that Fred has talked about and Joe, the charitable giving is at the heart of Betfred. I think it's a testament to Fred and his late wife Mo, as well as the entire Doan family. It's always been core to the Betfred mission, and we look forward to embracing that mission and extending it here and carrying that legacy forward here to the United States. We've already done that to a small scale. Obviously, we're just getting started. We are in startup mode, so it's not always easy to be able to contribute and volunteer. But in every local market we've been in to date, we have given back to the local communities. Typically, that's sponsored. That's working with our local sports teams, media partnerships, casino partnerships to embrace charitable organizations that are important to them. Anything from mental health to veterans affairs to homelessness, various different causes that we've embraced with our local partners. We look forward to doing that also here in Las Vegas. We've done that to some extent, but we recently hired a director of people and culture who joined us in October. In addition to traditional HR duties and tasks and staffing, she's also going to be directly responsible for heading up our charitable plans here directly here in the state of Nevada. She's already had multiple conversations with certain local organizations, everything from Clark County School District, Las Vegas Rescue Mission, and the local chapters of the Ronald McDonald House and the American Heart Association. And we look forward to rolling out our charitable plans in the very near future.
So this is just a summary, but I won't go into that. But we appreciate your time and attention for that presentation. If it pleases the board, I just would like to take a minute at this time to address one of the areas of concern that came up during the investigation. Just real briefly, I want to kind of give some context and maybe so you have a little it's already been addressed to some extent, but if it pleases the board. And this has to do with some issues of non-disclosure that unfortunately came up during the investigative process. But Betfred has been a successful and ethical gaming operator for over 50 years, including applying for and receiving multiple licenses throughout the world, including the United States. Betfred's historical experience with licensing has always been very positive. However, coming into the Nevada market, which is frankly the standard of the industry, there were some things that I think everyone involved in completely understand as far as the the thoroughness and stringency of the licensing process here in Nevada. But Betfred quickly learned through its interaction with the investigative staff of the Nevada Gaming Control Board that what had been acceptable in some of the other jurisdictions needed to be improved and upgraded when it came to Nevada. During the course of the Nevada investigation, issues arose regarding several areas in which Betfred had failed to fully disclose matters, such as one item, trade credit, among others, few others. However, without exception, these failures were not an attempt to delay, hinder, or obstruct the investigative process. Once these issues presented themselves, Betfred swiftly dealt with each and every such matter by supplying any missing information requested by the Nevada investigative team in both a timely and thorough manner. Betfred's redoubling of its efforts in this regard have been positively acknowledged by the investigative staff in the Nevada Gaming Control Board in their ongoing communications with Betfred. Notwithstanding, Betfred acknowledges that the prior failures to disclose fall squarely on Betfred and its officers. Betfred sincerely apologizes for such prior failures and is steadfastly committed to being a model of transparency and regulatory compliance going forward in order to meet the high standards required of it in the state of Nevada. So with that, that concludes our affirmative presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the detailed affirmative presentation along with the video and the overview of the company. So I will jump into the areas of concern since you just brought them up. And in particular, you mentioned trade break. Can you tell me what the issues are or were?
Yes, I can. Back to Tradefed, and I'll probably have Fred come up and explain some of it too. But Tradefed dealt with a business opportunity that the Betfred group entered into, more particularly Fred Doan, in regards to certain selling and trading of Forex through certain options and things of that nature. It was a company that was located in Australia, and that was something Fred had looked at, done due diligence on the parties involved, and he can explain more of that. And then, kind of be brief, the company was operating successfully. Fred was regularly updated and told that everything was in compliance, everything was proper. And it was a real shock when he learned otherwise in about 2019, when there was an investigation by the Australian securities arm of the Australian government. At that point, Betfred and Fred took quick action to shut that down. They placed the company, at least part of the company that they controlled, into receivership and basically shut down the operations when he found out there was problems there. And so that's been the status up to this point. It's still in receivership, and there's pending some actions regarding the other companies that were involved, but were not directly under Betfred or Fred's supervision. But part of the companies and part of that Fred had dealings with and control over, that's been shut down and is in receivership.
Oh, Okay, thank you. I appreciate that explanation, and I understand that is there a trial set for February still?
Yes.
Is that date February 13th still?
Go ahead, Fred. Go ahead.
Could I give you some more detail on this, please?
I don't necessarily need you to at this point. I understand that there is a trial set. Is that correct?
There's a trial. There's in the action brought by the equivalent of the SEC in Australia, there are several defendants. The trial that's coming up in February is against the second defendant, which is not Trade, Fred, or Bright ASU. That is the same company, but they changed the name. So that trial coming up is actually not against the third defendant because it's in receivership. And so the issues, any claims, recovery of any money is being dealt with through the receivership on that.
Okay. And I understand that Mr. Fred Dunn was not handling the day-to-day operations of this, of Trade Fred at the time of the issues of concern.
That's correct.
So that's right. So this was, from my perspective, one of the largest areas of concern as it relates to the failure to disclose. Why wasn't this disclosed?
If I could go back to the start of Trade Fred, it was introduced to me by a friend who said, I think you should meet this guy that I've known for 7 years. He comes from an honest family. He's a good businessman. And I think there might be an investment opportunity there for you. I had him checked out in every way through our accountants, through lawyers in Israel. He had no criminal record. And everything that he said to me, he produced. And it went on for a few years. Every milestone that he set, he achieved. If we can go back to October 19, we made an application, a vetting application from Betfred to the Pennsylvania authorities on in October 19. On the 18th of December 19, we got a shock. We knew there was we found out there was a problem in Australia. It came right out of the blue. Over the Christmas period, within 3 weeks, Christmas and New Year, we worked at it and we made a decision to close the company down because I didn't like what was happening there. The smell wasn't right anymore. So we closed it down and put it into administration. And it was when we made the application to Nevada, we used the same application that we'd made in Pennsylvania for Nevada. And what we did, we missed the opportunity of telling you about Australia. It was a pure mistake that we just completely missed it. And that's how this arose.
Okay. What due diligence was performed in advance to engaging in this endeavor?
What diligence was when we started the business?
Right.
Oh, okay. We went through all the procedures. Everything was checked out. I went to Israel a few times. Saw the setup there. I had absolutely no reason to think that anything was wrong. I had a monthly meeting with the guy who was running the business, and he assured me everything was right. I had no reason to think anything was wrong in any way.
Did you look into the illegality or legality of operating in various jurisdictions?
Well, as far as I know, we were operating under somebody else's license in Australia, and I was told that it was legal, and I think it was legal. But the company that we had the license, they were the company that got in trouble, and that's where it went wrong.
Okay. So going back to the reason for non-disclosure is, your testament that it was simply an oversight. Is that what you're saying?
It was an oversight. What we did, it was cut and paste from the Pennsylvania application we made. and we did the same application. And when we made the application in Pennsylvania, there was no problem at all with the authorities in Australia. That was in October. The problem that we found out was in December. So it was clear and clean in October, and we made that application, the Pennsylvania application, to Nevada I think it was in the January.
But it was, so you understand, as someone operating 250 plus businesses in various jurisdictions, why, cutting and pasting is not acceptable.
Yeah, we messed up.
Yeah. And I believe you stated already, but TradeFed is now closed for business. Is that correct?
I wonder if I could ask Paul Kazanik to come up, because he knows much more about this than I do.
Okay.
Hi there. So when TradeFed started operating, it was.
Could you say your name for the record?
Sorry, my name is Paul Kazanik. I'm an accountant.
We have a transcriber.
Yeah, no problem. So TradeFed started operating, and within the group structure, there was 3 licensed jurisdictions. It held the one subsidiary of the holding company held a license in Cyprus.
Can you speak up a little more? I'm having a bit of trouble here.
Sorry, one subsidiary within the group held a license in Cyprus, and that license was granted by CISEC. So when Fred took the decision to close the business in January, that Cypriot business gave all the customers the money back and told them that it wasn't trading anymore, and we're in the process of selling that subsidiary. So it's now dormant with no trading going through it, and we're in the process of selling it. Another of the licensed territories was in Vanuatu, and shortly after, again, Fred took the decision to close the business, that Vanuatu subsidiary was sold. And then the third licensed entity was in Australia, which held a corporate authorized representative license under USG. And again, when Fred took the decision to close the business in January, we exited that market in a controlled manner. All the customers that had live positions, they were passed to USG, who took control, and were working with the customers to give them the money back. And in March 2020, Bright AU was put into liquidation. And when Bright AU went into liquidation, there was more than enough funds to deal with the liquidator fees and handle any complaints that were live at that time.
Okay. Member Katara said there were other areas of concern, but prior to proceeding to that, do you have any?
I do. Just a couple of points of clarification. Did you say Vanuatu is one of the markets as well?
Vanuatu, there was a license.
I don't know that it came clear across.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Johnson, you said one thing that just raised a question in my head. You mentioned that at a certain point, Mr. Fred Dunn and Betfred detangled. Betfred had nothing to do with this, correct?
Right.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that was clear for the record. Yeah. This involvement here was purely Mr. Fred Dunn with this entity. It had nothing to do with the wider
that's
corporate
correct.
enterprise.
There was no overlap.
Okay, and I did appreciate, because I did want to hear from you specifically on this in terms of the miss or lack of disclosure on this item. And to clarify again, when you filed it in Pennsylvania, this had not yet surfaced. Move forward a few months, you're now filing in Nevada. It's surfaced. At that point, it was required to be disclosed to us. However, it was an omission, inadvertent omission, correct? Okay. Just wanted to get the chronology correct on that.
And I would mention, Chair Watkins, you brought up the issue of an issue that may have been, I think, referring to the fact that some of the customers were based in China. There was an issue about that. But I wanted to make sure the record was clear that Fred was told by those people operating and in charge of all of that they had obtained an opinion from what they called a tier 1 legal group, indicating that was not legal. And so that was the information that Fred had. Now later, of course, he became aware of other issues, but that was what he was, that was his knowledge on the subject, that was not illegal based on that.
And since you brought that up, that legal opinion had to do with the trading activities with respect to residents of China.
Right.
Just add one thing on there. So the court case that ASIC brought against Tradefred and USG and another authorized representative, there was a collection of claims that the regulator brought, and the claim that related to dealing with Chinese customers was brought against USG. It was not levied at Tradefred. So Tradefred didn't have any Chinese customers, and there's been no allegation that Tradefred did have any Chinese customers.
Thank you. That's an important distinction. It'd be good to get on the record too. I think that was clear to us, but it's good to get that on the record. Was there any action taken against the tier 1 law firm?
I'm not aware of, I don't know.
But this finding was from ASIC, correct? Stating that, no, we disagree with what your legal guidance was.
Right.
And therefore we're going to proceed with action. Okay, thank you. I didn't have anything further on that, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So there were also other areas of concern, then also other non-disclosures as it relates to Pet Free and Acosta.
Yes. I could address those, but maybe it'd be better to hear from the applicant himself.
Acosta is a small insurance company that I own. The non-disclosure there was a claim against Acosta. Acosta didn't believe that it was a valid claim, and it went to court. And when it went to court, Acosta lost the case. Within 2 days, the man had been paid, and it was £1 million, the claim, but it didn't come on my radar because I am the investor, I am the owner. Other people run it, but I think we need to put it into perspective. At £1 million, they wouldn't bring it to my door. That one, it was a small one, and that's why we missed it.
Okay. As to Pet Free.
And what was the problem with Pet Free?
Could I just follow up on the Acosta?
Yeah.
Real quick. So that £1 million, though, that wasn't paid up by you. That was paid up by the company.
By Acosta.
Acosta.
Yeah.
And you didn't have any day-to-day involvement with that either. You're a passive investor, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Thank you.
But it was immediately paid.
Okay. And as to Pet Free.
The Pet Free was...
let's see.
Yeah, this was before my time. It was just missed. I think, again, the segmentation, the way we organise the business, just listening to Fred with Acosta then, that couldn't happen now because Acosta have to meet me and my colleague Paul. Sometimes I think Fred may be aware of things in the past where they may have mentioned it, they may not. That was normal course of business for Acosta. It wouldn't even flag to him that there would be any impact, and it needed to even mention it to anyone else because it's normal course of business. So the Pet Free data breach was just inadvertently missed. There was no intention. That could not happen today and would not happen today. And I think we've hopefully demonstrated that with the amount of sharing we've done with the regulatory investigation that's underway in our retail estate and in any business now. We know what we need to do. We know we need to report to you, and we have the structure in place to ensure that nothing is ever missed. So going back to what I said earlier, Fred is still involved in all of these ventures. He's still meeting people informally, but they have to come through me and they have to speak to us now, and we make sure that we control what's going on. And we've got a structure in place where any litigation, any issues are flagged straight up to us. So apologies. That's all can say on that.
And it is my understanding that a lot of the failure to disclose issues were related to the segmented nature of the businesses
100%.
and the lack of a centralized reporting structure,
Yeah.
and that your communication has improved. Our agents have acknowledged that, and
Yeah.
I appreciate those improvements. I also understand that this investigation was put on pause at the request of counsel, and you all regrouped, came back to the table, and after coming back to the table, that there was full disclosure, full cooperation, and definitely a significant improvement. So I recognize that as well and appreciate that. And perhaps it was, you know, just a function, in reaction to or a consequence of not you all not knowing the or understanding the Nevada regulatory environment. And so hopefully through the process, you have come to understand the Nevada regulatory environment and the required disclosures. Do you agree with that?
100%.
Okay. Member Casaros.
Yeah, on pet free though, this was the one with the data breach, correct?
I believe so, yes.
All right. I don't want to go into the details of that, but I understand how that actually happened, and I'm frankly comfortable with that one.
It was just poor communication internally, and we've resolved that now.
Okay.
That actually came through a third party, as I recall from the materials.
It came through a bingo platform, as is the case with many hacks that that actually came through a third party, which was a bingo platform, which, as you know, is a big problem with people coming in through other third parties and even remote access and getting into the company. And that's how a lot of these data breaches occur. So that was the case with that.
Okay.
There is also the pet-free violations that dealt with the investigation. So let me just briefly talk about that, because I think you've talked about the data breach, but there was the issues with pet-free and the assessment that was done by the regulators back in 2019 initially. And there were some deficiencies that were identified at that time, mainly having to do with social responsibility and anti-money laundering. So when that was determined, the way they do the regulations in the United Kingdom is a little different than here. It's not so much strict rule-based as other issues of general compliance and looking at things in general rather than specific rules that you have to adhere with. So when they came in, they looked at what was there. They did decide that there were some deficiencies back in 2019. Betfred went ahead and started implementing a plan to remedy all those deficiencies. And it was really completed by 21. Now there was a fine that was assessed, which was paid. It was approximately $3 million fine, but it was of course immediately paid. And I'd like to also point
and this relates to the 2019
yes
issue.
Yes.
And what issue in particular are you talking about? There were several issues related to pet free and an investigation of the UK Gambling Commission. Is that correct?
Yes. What they found was where they fell short was in social responsibility, problem gambling, that type of thing, and also AML, anti-money laundering restrictions and things that were in place.
Was this in 2016 or 2019?
2019 is what I.
Okay, and there was a 2016 issue as well. So there was an issue in 2016 and 2019 related to instances of individuals stealing money from their employer.
There were back in 2016 a couple of isolated instances where someone had actually, of course, had nothing to do with pet free, but someone had embezzled money from their from their employer, and had come in and gambled some of it, with pet free.
And so they had deposited and lost large amounts of money.
Yes. And that money was partially refunded back to the employer, and the balance of the money was then also donated for some charitable causes and things of that nature. So that was the remedy in that situation.
How has Pet Free addressed the issues that were present from the two instances of individuals in both 2016 and 2019 being able to steal money from their employer and then deposit and lose large amounts with Pet Free?
Well, those all have to deal with the anti-money laundering issues and the social responsibility problems that they found. But there were those two isolated instances where people were able to come in and place money, place bets with money that they had embezzled or gotten from other ill-gotten ways. But that wasn't what was really the fault with the regulators. Not so much where the money came from, but the fact that they were able to place these bets. And that was a problem with the anti-money laundering restrictions that were in place at that time. So they began, they took care of those two problems. They instigated a real change in their whole operations and things, which started in 2019. Now there was, as I mentioned, there still was a fine, but by 2021 and 2022, they were actually issued.
What kind of changes were put in place? That's what I'm trying to get at. What improvements were made to address these issues? And my report suggests that that there were changes put in place. I'd like you to address those on the record.
So we've made significant improvements in our compliance. We've focused a lot around algorithms and the data that we're analysing. Anti-money laundering is a challenge for us when working with our regulator. We're anticipating the release of a white paper, which is a government review. We've significantly increased the size of our compliance team. I don't believe it could happen today. But we're assessing all money that's coming into the organisation. We're looking for betting patterns. We're looking for affordability. So we now have hard stop limits. This is in the UK. So we have hard stop limits where unless somebody is able to evidence through bank statements, pay slips, pension statements, where the source of those funds are, we would not allow them to bet anymore. Whereas back in 2019, we had a higher risk appetite and they were able to bet to higher levels. That cannot happen today.
And so is there a measure in place? I understand that there were measures put in place after the 2016 incident. And then in 2019, there was a separate incident. And in 2019, I understand that while you all were reaching out to the customer, the account was not blocked. And they were able to continue the behavior. So is there a method in place as of now? And I acknowledge that this was also a common practice.
Yeah, we have automatic blocking. So we've been working with our technology provider. We're using the algorithms. They're highlighting the cases of concern, and that's putting an immediate block on an account, rather than a case, to allow operator review. And then we've had manual operator review. We will then speak to the clients where needed to understand the source of wealth, the source of funds. But we're also looking for safer gambling where we're seeing betting pattern changes. So if, for example, they bet every Saturday and all of a sudden they're betting in the middle of the night and they're betting every 2 minutes, we notice a change in betting behaviour. So we're looking at our social responsibility measures in place there, again, to protect the consumer.
Okay.
But this is a constantly evolving field. We have to continually look at this. We have to continually improve. We can't stand still. And I wasn't here in 2019, but possibly we weren't doing that constant evolution and reevaluating ourselves enough. We've recently appointed an internal auditor, again, to review. We weren't auditing and quality assuring our own procedures enough. So our internal audit first guy. He starts on the 1st of March. That's a function, that's a global role. But I think it ties into what we've seen in the retail assessment recently, that again, we've had correct processes and procedures in place, but we haven't necessarily been doing the internal audit and the quality assurance to making sure those are embedded within the organisation. So it's a key feature, a key role, key department that we're bringing in that just we didn't have before. It's not good enough, but we're on a journey. We improve that structure we've put in place in the US from day one. So we have internal audit today from day one. The UK is almost catching up to where we've started in the US because we don't have the baggage.
Yes, I understand and acknowledge those improvements. If you could, and I'm not sure which of you would like to talk about it, but also address the 2021 investigation.
With Pet Free or with?
This was with Pet Free. And then I understand that there was another issue concerning Dunn Brothers in 2022, but at this time, I'd like you to address the Pet Free issue in 2021.
So again, social responsibility, AML failings, the Gambling Commission weren't satisfied with the measures that we had in place. They felt that some of our measures fell down from their guidance. We're not working with a rule-based approach in the UK. It's risk-based. We're in this almost no man's land where we have our risk appetite, we have our processes and policies, but then the Gambling Commission say it's not good enough. I'm not putting responsibility on the Gambling Commission. It wasn't good enough what we were doing in some areas, not all. We put a robust action plan in place. I can't remember the exact dates, but they came to us just before Christmas for the audit. By the end of January, we'd resolved 95% of their queries. We're under investigation at the moment. We've shared the documentation with you for our retail estate. We've not been able to make the changes as quickly as we did online because it's a retail estate with 1,400 shops, 7,000 employees. We need to make sure again that we embed the culture and the new processes and policy through effective training. We're nearly there now. We've asked for a regulatory settlement. We've accepted the failures and findings in most places, but not all. And we're looking to change that.
Okay. And with regard to this 2021 issue, is this the one you're referring to with the $3 million
Yes.
fine? And there was also a warning and advice on how to improve, correct?
Yes.
And did you accept that advice on how to improve?
We did, and we had an audit from the Gibraltar. We're under two regulators under Betfred. The Gibraltar Gambling Commission did an audit of us. I think it was August last year, and they give us a clean bill of health.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Anything else with regard to the 2021 or 2016 or 2019?
Yeah, no, just the 2021 one. The fine there, we're talking about just over 3 million. I think it's probably, I'd like to put in a little more context there because my understanding there's been an evolution too with UK. I know you just said a second ago you don't want to put it on the UK authorities, but I think very clearly there's been an evolution with the standards and changes that they're requiring upon their licensees at this point.
Yes, if you look on the Gambling Commission website, you'll see that most operators have had a fine. It's standard. I don't want to blame the regulator. We have to accept the findings that there were against us. But we're in this really difficult place where we're waiting for guidance, and the Gambling Commission are in no man's land. They're trying to implement. They don't know what they're meant to implement. We don't know what they're meant to implement. We're trying to work together constructively. I've been on a call this morning for 2 hours with the Gambling Commission. We need to find a way until the political until we get the white paper.
And I think your fine was 3.25 million is what I'm looking at here. And I know we've seen some upwards of 15 to 20 million.
Yeah, some of our counterparts have paid 17 million, 18 million pounds. So even more in dollars.
And I think the number we had was like between 65 and 70 over the more recent history was the number of companies that were fined. In terms of relativeness, is it fair to say that the amount that was levied against you would be significantly less or in line or more than?
I would say it's less. Our business isn't the same scale as some of the really big fines, but taking that apart, it was still less, significantly less.
And then in terms of the requirements, there's some there's objectivity and subjectivity with some of these things. When you talked about the behavioral changes that you are monitoring, is that something they are imposing upon you, or is that something you're doing as a company from a social gaming responsibility perspective? Meaning, we're going to look at that behavioral changes. The example you just used a second ago, this punter bets on Saturday nights this time. Oh, now we've got some activity at 2 a.m. on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
We have a responsibility. We don't want customers who can't afford to bet. It's not good business. So we're doing it off our own back, but we are working with the regulator as well. It's just really, really difficult. We're being, they may say we're over reliant on winnings, or they may say we're over reliant on open source information, yet they won't say, well, what if? So they switch language where in some occasions they're looking at what the customer has staked, in other occasions it's what they've lost. We're just taking our own risk-based approach to say what is the right thing for the consumer, making sure that we have the measures in place to protect the consumer, protect our business as well. Reputationally, we don't want these fines. So we're doing it off our own back.
So as part of your risk assessment, then that's something you've offered to them. Look, these are some of the steps we're doing. We're doing A, B, and C, which you require specifically, which is an affordability check, of course, source of funds, yes, AML controls in place. But in addition to that, we're also looking at some of these other things and instituting algorithmic sort of monitors as well. Is that accurate?
Yes.
As part of our process here too, we have a process where our minimum internal control standards, we have them set in place, but companies have to submit them to us. And then we look at them analytically and say, yes, that passes muster, or you've got some bits here that you need to correct. Then we go out and audit it later and then figure out whether or not you've actually complied with that. So
I wish the UK Gambling Commission would be that. If we gave them what we're doing, they would not sanction it. So we have to. The only time we know whether we've got it right or wrong is when they come and do an audit.
That's kind of like us as well, in that we just say, from a high level, it looks good, but we're going to come back out and audit you later.
Yeah,
and
no,
then
they wouldn't even
whether
say. Yeah, they wouldn't even say it looks good.
Oh.
But they're moving to an account management based approach, and I hope that we'll get to a similar place where we've got difficult decisions, or we're not quite sure how to handle certain scenarios because everything is changing. That the hope is that we can approach them, look at a problem together, and work out what would be the right approach, not on specific individual cases, but more broadly.
And then in terms of disclosure, the Trade Fred, the Oz one, was not disclosed, and then the Costa one, it was disclosed from the investigation perspective, just not the lawsuit. This one was disclosed, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we now know what we need to do.
And I would acknowledge that the UK investigations were part of a broader crackdown and an evolution of social responsibility. But as Nevada licensees, you are required to comply with other jurisdictions' laws and regulations, which is, why it was an area of concern, and it was also rather recent as well. So I just wanted to relay that. Any other issues as it relates to pet-free and the violations related to pet-free?
No.
Okay. Dunn Brothers.
Could I address one thing with pet-free? Because you mentioned it, I just wanted a little more detail on the record. It was mentioned that there was a subsequent review or audit, and Betfred received a letter in August of 24th of August, 2022. And this is to put your mind, I think, at ease that there's been substantial compliance and improvement. And what they indicated that Betfred demonstrated a clear plan of continual improvement to the risk and control framework, which was clearly reflected in the instances during the course of discussions and randomly reviewing other areas of business accounts, which were reviewed, which had been either suspended or closed due to not having met timeframes or other requirements outside the standard SOF/SOW process, which helps demonstrate that there are various layers to Betfred's AML, CTF, and CPF systems and controls. So I just want to put that on the record that was when they came out again, they indicated, very substantial improvement. And there's a process in place where those types of things, because of these restrictions on time frame and different things, those accounts would be shut down, and that's the process that's in place at this point.
Yes, and our agents have acknowledged as well that there have been improvements as it relates to the issues that come up with the UK Gambling Commission and otherwise as well. So thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Dunn Brothers.
Did you have a specific query?
Can you just generally address the July 2022 investigation by the UK Gambling Commission?
The results were disappointing. As you will have seen from the communication that we've shared, we've asked for a regulatory settlement. We've accepted many of the findings. It's for us, it's the internal audit that's going to make the big difference there. We had processes in place and policies, but they weren't effective. Staff weren't trained well enough, and it wasn't good enough.
What training improvements did you make?
The policies weren't clear enough. They weren't written in plain English. We weren't auditing and testing policies. So you can't just have a piece of paper. We need to make sure that we're auditing and testing in the shop working environment. But it's difficult, these are anonymous customers in a retail environment in the UK. We have large volumes of customers, and some of our controls, they weren't actually fit for purpose. We were expecting staff to do manual calculations in their head when they're really busy running a really busy shop. So we've done a root branches review of all of our processes, and I would say at the management level, we just didn't have enough oversight over the data, KPIs, stats. The data was there, we weren't looking at it.
And was there any particular training given to employees?
Lots around affordability. So the way we measure affordability, which we believe is effective, is we look for behaviour patterns in a retail environment. So if the customer is getting aggressive, if again the betting pattern changes, they're coming in more often, they're spending more money than they would normally. But a lot of that is in an individual's head, a shop manager, and that's quite difficult for them to do. And the Gambling Commission weren't satisfied that behavioural indicators were enough. But with anonymous-based play, we don't add up. A customer coming into the shop day after day after day, it's really difficult for us to calculate, well, what have they lost or what have they staked, because we don't have account-based play. So that's, again, we're in a really difficult place with the Gambling Commission, where they're saying we need to understand affordability for your consumers. We have what we believe are good control measures in place, but they're not consistent enough with the staff. So we've had to do a lot of training around our staff to make sure that they're monitoring the more vulnerable customers. So we've reduced overall the number of customers that we're trying to monitor and tried to focus on the customers who are at real risk of harm, so that the staff have more of a chance of being able to recognise.
Okay, thank you. And these violations with the UK Gambling Commission were disclosed, so I appreciate that. I don't have anything further on the UK Gambling Commission areas of concern, but there was one other. Member Casares, do you have anything else on UK?
Nope.
Okay. And that related to the children's finances, the Dunn children's finances. Do you want to address that affirmatively?
Yes. Do you have a specific query?
So the issue was apparently that Fred Dunn was investing on behalf of his children without them having knowledge or taking responsibility for the investments. And would you like to address that?
Might be better for Fred to
Okay.
address this in the first instance.
I mentioned earlier about the background that Peter and I came from. When we started being successful and investing, I got to a stage, and Peter to some extent, where I realised that I'm not going to last forever, and I invested in shares in various businesses for my children, my 4 children. But what I didn't want them to do, I didn't want them getting dividends where they could fly around the world in private jets, because we never did that, and I wanted my kids to keep their feet on the ground. So the dividends that they got from the various companies, they came to me, and I reinvested those dividends in further investments for them. If the route was wrong, it should have gone from the company to my children, and they could have handed it over to me, and I'd have reinvested it for them. That's the way it happens now. So that was purely what it was, and I think I'm not sure what Peter, my brother, has done for his kids, but something similar, I would imagine. It was just a matter of I didn't want to spoil my kids.
Yeah, I understand that. And I acknowledge that our agents have let us know that the children have now taken responsibility and are handling or have knowledge of their own investments. They're taking a more active role. Is that correct?
That is correct. And on a quarterly basis, the 4 children come in separately into my offices and speak to Joanne and our investment team, and they're much more knowledgeable of where their cash is now.
Right. Okay. Because the concern was simply that our agents were asking them questions and they didn't understand or, what was happening in the businesses that they were invested in. So it sounds like that has been addressed.
Yes. And
Okay.
I can say to you, it was done for all the best reasons.
Okay. Thank you. Member Casaros, anything on the children's finances?
No, but I appreciate you not wanting to spoil your kids. I'm going through that right now with
Yeah.
a couple of young ones.
It's too easy.
All right. And to the extent that there were other areas of concern, I think they were minor in comparison, and I don't think they need to be addressed, at least not, on the record. And they were either resolved during the investigative process, during the pause, or are not major areas of concern.
Thank you.
From my perspective. Let's talk about operations. So who will be staffing the sports book? Whose employees will those be?
You want to address that?
Chairwoman, all employees of the book, with the exception of one, will be directly employed by MGNV LLC, doing business as Mohegan Sun Casino. So the one exception is the manager, who is a direct employee of Betfred, but who has concurrently a direct solid reporting line to me in my capacity as the general manager. All other team members are indeed employees directly employed by my business.
Okay. And there's a plan to add pari-mutuel race wagering and parlay cards. Is that correct?
There is
at
not,
some point in the future.
There is not a plan today to do that, but recognizing that the license application was comprehensive
Right.
on behalf of Mohegan, we of course are seeking a license for sports, race pool, and pari-mutuel. But today there is no plan for race wagering or pari-mutuel.
Upon opening, but the possibility exists.
The possibility always exists, but again, no plan today.
Okay. And the signage will include both Betfred and Mohegan. Is that correct?
That is correct. Signage is designed to make certain that the public knows who operates the casino. It is operated by Mohegan, managed by Betfred.
Okay. And who will be paying for the capital improvements? Is that Mohegan?
Capital improvements today, as they exist, I'll call it the brick and mortar improvements to the leasehold that Mohegan maintains at Virgin Hotels. Those improvements have indeed been paid for by Betfred.
Okay.
It was part of the original economic deal, the business deal between Betfred and Mohegan.
And the application doesn't include a mobile betting aspect.
Today it does not, but I would expect that any successful book will need, of course, to be mobile and app operated in order to ultimately achieve the success that's intended.
Okay, and the equipment will be provided by IGT?
That is correct. IGT is the backbone system driver of Betfred's managed operation.
Okay. All right, did you want to dig into those operations
Yeah,
a little
a
more,
bit.
Member Casaros?
Okay, so I guess I'll follow up on that last point. So is the contract between Mohegan and IGT, or is it between Betfred and IGT?
The contract for the
For the platform.
for the platform is between IGT and Betfred.
Understood. And so in terms of the operations, you're going to have the ticket writers, the cashiers, those are going to be your employees. In terms of the platform, then IGT presumably is going to be on the back end, assisting as an information service with lines, prices, cutoff times.
All of that is correct, but I would like my colleagues from Betfred, if I slip off the track here, correct me, please. The most important thing I can tell you, Member Katsaros, is that my team is familiar with IGT-driven systems. We have a very close working relationship with IGT as a company because our casino platform is IGT-powered. And that relationship helps me to bridge the gap along with my staff to ultimately do back-end accounting, compliance matters that are driven largely by Every as a backbone driver. We will layer that into the book from our compliance team working in conjunction with Betfred's compliance team. So at the end of that story, the backbone system from IGT will ride on the Mohegan network. It is our plumbing, so to speak, with Betfred and IGT contractually bringing IGT to bear as the sports betting platform.
Understood there. And so from that perspective, though, it's going to be more of interaction between Betfred and IGT in terms of the offerings, right?
That is correct.
Obviously, you care about all the other things you just talked about, but that's the purpose for them being the key employee here.
That is correct.
Operating that. Okay. So you answered that already. Account wagering. So we're kind of at a point now when we're pre-PASPA in 2018. Everything was all nice and clean, I would say, in Nevada. Now we've got a much different dynamic with sports betting. So the conditions that Chair Watkins was just mentioning with regard to signage and the use of the Betfred versus Mohegan, those have been offered up or suggested as part of the conditions there. There's nothing necessarily in our regulations that talk to that, but I think it's important for us to continue to evolve in this space as the dynamics between all these different partners have changed since 2018, frankly.
Fully understood.
And so we're not holding you out, at least in my mind, for these suggested conditions. These are something that might be a framework going forward for others, and I did want to mention that on the record. I think it's important for us to do that.
And I agree from a parallel perspective. Certainly, I offer slot machines from various licensed manufacturers and providers of slot machines throughout the casino. But it's always important that the guest understands if there's a problem at the game, if there's a dispute at the game, the first buck stops at Mohegan. We will resolve it working with both the guest and, of course, with the regulatory staff in order to bring any kind of problematic condition to a suitable resolution.
And then just following up on the other two bits that we just mentioned, mobile and then parlay cards. Is there a reason that it's not going forward right now, or is it just a timing thing that you're going to catch up with that?
I'm going to defer to my colleagues from Betfred for that.
I think on the parlay card perspective, obviously parlay cards are hugely popular for football betting primarily. Given the timelines of when we're likely to take a first bet, we saw that there was probably only going to be one more football game this football season. It is something that we will want to relook at before the start of the next NFL season in September.
And mobile?
Mobile, same thing. Obviously, mobile is the future of sports betting. We see that in all of our other states. We will be approaching mobile here in Nevada. And the most likely scenario for that is obviously before the next football season starts.
Okay. Yeah, if you look at my betting patterns, you're going to see parlay cards, mobile. Well, later on, not right now, next week. But
We'll get your email. I can send you something.
then you'll see I go dark for a few months after that. Question though, in terms of your local breakdown versus visitors, then, because mobile, of course, is a huge component for a sports book. But what's your breakdown of visitation? Do you have any numbers you mind sharing? Don't feel that you have to.
I can speak to it in general. Certainly, our business, given that we are in the destination called Las Vegas, we rely on guests that travel from afar to populate our business no differently than do casinos on the Strip. But there's a long legacy, if you back up through the history of our location and its prior brand name, there's a long legacy of local guests as well. So we live in a basket of guests that is essential to have both. We have to have a local clientele. We're very appreciative of those high frequency locals that visit us and bring us their loyalty and their business. At the same time, of course, I need the hotel to fill up with destination travelers in order to create enough volume for the casino to find its way. Beyond that, both are important.
Okay.
Okay. Did you have any more questions for the operations or the individuals?
On the operations side, I just wanted to broaden out a bit more to the other domestic markets in the U.S. right now. So I understand very clearly what your strategy here is in Nevada. Could you talk about that outside of Nevada? So for instance, mobile versus retail in the various markets. You don't have to go through each one of what platform provider you're using,
Certainly.
et cetera, et cetera.
We are 100% open bet platform outside of Nevada. We're currently doing business in 9 states. There's a mix of retail and there are 2 states that are retail only. That's Louisiana and Washington. And there are 2 states that are mobile only, which are Virginia and Ohio. And there's I can go through some of the other states we're in if you'd like. But right now we're doing both mobile and retail.
And then if we look at sports versus online casino, it looks like Pennsylvania, and I don't have the list in front of me. Pennsylvania might be the only one that you're in that actually has online casino.
Correct. Most of the states we're in are sports only. Because Pennsylvania does have iGaming, but we are only the sports betting partner of our partner, the Porch Creek. So we're in Wind Creek, Bethlehem. They have another vendor that they use for the actual player account management, so the PAM and the iGaming piece. We do sports betting only for them.
Okay. I'll look at the list because I think the list has grown since our report, frankly, of where you're at right now. Were you in West Virginia? No? Or no?
No, we are in. I mean, I can.
That would have been the other one. Then.
Yeah. So Iowa, Colorado, Arizona, Louisiana, Washington, Ohio, Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania.
Okay. No casino then. You said you use OpenBet here. Is that what you use over in the UK as well then? No.
I'll defer to either Mark.
Well, that's okay. Before we'll stick with the US. I didn't know if it was going to be.
No, the UK is on a completely separate platform.
Okay. And I imagine you might be looking in Canada as well then.
We've had various conversations about Canada. No immediate plans.
And I will note in our report, because we're always looking at where are you doing business right now. So we've got a very clear picture of where you're doing business, and that you guys have avoided gray markets completely from anything I can see in our materials and anything that we've uncovered or investigated. So I do want to put that on the record.
That is correct.
I think Ms. Whitaker mentioned about having your own proprietary platform at a certain point. We don't need to discuss that. But that was it. That was it on the ops.
Okay, thank you.
And as to the individuals, did you want to ask any particular questions? I'll note that we didn't have any areas of concern. The individual backgrounds came back clean. But if you wanted to bring someone to the podium to ask them any particular question.
I didn't have any particular questions on their background whatsoever. I'll echo that. The backgrounds came back completely clean. All 12 or whatever the number is, frankly, which is a big number. And that's quite noteworthy that I don't think there was a single blemish on anybody's background. So commend you on that.
Yes, thank you for that. All right, any other questions in general?
I don't believe so. I think we covered a lot of ground here today.
Yes, we did.
Went through the areas of concern that were outlined, went through the operations proposed here. I guess more of a legal question. The structure here that we have is looking at a key employee licensing event. I think we've only had one instance of this, but we have checked with our Attorney General's office to make sure there was nothing concerning from a licensing regulatory perspective. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to share on that front. I think it's clear from the record, though, where the delineation of duties are going to be between the 2 or 3 parties, if you will.
That is correct, and we did work with staff before we proceeded forward with the form of application.
Okay. I didn't have anything further in terms of questions.
Okay. I will say that, and you all recognized early on and made affirmative presentations, and I appreciate that there were some failures to disclose and areas of concern. However, many of those areas of concerns and failures to disclose were addressed and I think appropriately resolved during the pause period. And as things came up, you all addressed them quickly and were cooperative. And so I appreciate that. Many of the changes that have been made to improve the whether it be the due diligence, the bringing in Ms. Whitaker as the CEO, which our agents have said she has a stellar background and will be a significant asset to the agency. Adding due diligence requirements, improving communication flow, and building a centralized reporting structure, and just the general good reputation of Betfred. I'm comfortable moving forward with the application, given these improvements, given the acknowledgements and the Dunn Children's willingness to take responsibility for their own investments.
Yeah, I'm a resounding yes, frankly, and I'd hate to see any sort of guardrails put on time limits or limitations or anything like that as well. I'm happy and somewhat excited for the state of Nevada to be able to recommend an approval here, frankly. Part of our charter is to foster a competitive environment. And before we do that, while we do that, we have to ensure that the parties that come before us are going to be suitable. I think they've exceeded their burden here today to prove their suitability. And so, again, the next tranche of that is to foster competitiveness. I think they're going to bring a great product. I think it's going to do exactly what that is with one of the things that we're chartered to do, foster a competitive environment. As I mentioned, I think every individual has exceeded their burden as well here today. We measure it from somewhat subjective terms, but honesty, integrity, business acumen, good character. I mean, I think that sums up this company for me. If we use the word gold standard, I don't like to use that a lot for our regulatory environment, so I won't because it's a bit pretentious. But in terms of a company, I would say this is what a gold standard company should be. We had some issues, concerns with non-disclosure. The issues themselves, frankly, for me, weren't that concerning. It was the non-disclosure piece. But this happens, especially when you got 250 companies. I mean, gold standard shouldn't be the impossible standard or and I think there should be some level of predictability and consistency with the decisions that we take. And I think this is squarely the type of company and family and team that we would want to have in this marketplace. So I just thank you guys for all being here today too. There was no need for any of the other applicants to be here either. Those as well, their backgrounds came back completely clean. It would have been a more packed room. We might not have fit them all, but I'm glad you guys are here today. And I'm happy that the chair agreed to allow it to happen today so that you can stay overnight, enjoy some Las Vegas entertainment, and then come back tomorrow and do it again before the commission here. And I think you were smart setting up your offices in Vegas as well. That was your first good decision.
All right. Have you all had an opportunity to review the updated conditions?
Yes, we have.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And those are acceptable?
Yes, they are acceptable.
Okay. All right. And was there something else that you wanted to address, Mr.
Just want to put on the record that we've reviewed draft number 2 of the 5th revised order of registration dated January 4th, 2023, and we have no issues with it.
Okay.
Sorry, what was the date on that?
January 4th.
Thank you. I was just looking at Chief Crusoe over there because I didn't have that date.
All right. Anything else from council?
Just want to thank you again for your time and consideration. We do believe we've met the burden required in order to have these licenses, these applications approved. So we would request that they be approved.
I agree. And with that, I'll take a motion.
Okay. I will move to recommend approval of special agenda item number 1 as read into the record by Secretary Rupert pursuant to draft number 2 of the company's 5th revised order of registration dated January 4th, 2003, with the exception of the items of for matters of registration for minority equity interest owners, which I'll deal with afterwards, with conditions as follows. We got a few of them here. Betfred Group Limited shall establish and maintain a gaming compliance plan for the purpose of, at a minimum, performing due diligence, determining the suitability of relationships with other entities and individuals, and to review and ensure compliance by Betfred Group Limited and any affiliated entities with the Nevada Gaming Control Act, the Commission's regulations, and the laws and regulations of any other jurisdiction in which Betfred Group Limited and any affiliated entities operate. The plan, any amendments thereto, and the members of the Gaming Compliance Committee, one such member who shall be independent and knowledgeable of the Act and regulations, shall be administratively reviewed and approved by the Chair of the Nevada Gaming Control Board or the Chair's designee. Betfred Group Limited shall amend the plan or any element thereof and perform such duties as may be requested or assigned by the Chair of the Nevada Gaming Control Board or the Chair's designee relating to a review of activities relevant to the continuing qualifications of Betfred Group Limited under the provisions of the Act and regulations. Second condition, Betfred Group Limited shall fund and maintain with the Nevada Gaming Control Board a revolving fund in the amount of $50,000 for the purpose of funding investigative reviews by the Nevada Gaming Control Board. Without limiting the foregoing, the Nevada Gaming Control Board shall have the right, without notice, to draw upon funds of said account for the payment of costs and expenses incurred by the Nevada Gaming Control Board and its staff in the surveillance, monitoring, and investigative review of all activities of Betfred Group Limited and its affiliated companies. Mohegan Sun Casino Las Vegas shall ensure all signs concerning the racebook and sports pool, all wagering tickets and betting sheets, house rules, and the homepage of any website or mobile app prominently indicate that Mohegan Sun Casino Las Vegas is the operator of the racebook, sports pool, and off-track pari-mutuel race wagering, as the case may be. Betfred Sports may be identified in such postings as the manager of the racebook or sports pool or by other teams that suggest its role as providing services for the operator, such as powered by or by Betfred Sports or Betfred at Mohegan Sun Sportsbook, except as otherwise provided for by the Nevada Gaming Control Board Chair or the Chair's designee. The ticket writers must be employees of MGNV LLC, DBA Mohegan Sun Casino Las Vegas. Any change in any agreement or the creation of any new agreement between MGNV LLC and Betfred Sports Nevada LLC must be reported to the Nevada Gaming Control Board within 30 days of such change. The Fred Dunn 1991 number 3 life interest settlement and deed of acknowledgement shall operate in accordance with the Nevada Gaming Control Board Act and regulations of the Nevada Gaming Commission promulgated pursuant thereto. The Fred Dunn 1991 number 1 life interest settlement and deed of acknowledgement shall operate in accordance with the Nevada Gaming Control Board Act and regulations of the Nevada Gaming Commission promulgated pursuant thereto. The F. Dunn 2007 family discretionary settlement and deed of acknowledgement shall operate in accordance with the Nevada Gaming Control Board Act and regulations of the Nevada Gaming Commission promulgated pursuant thereto. Peter Eric Dunn 1991 number 4 life interest settlement and deed of acknowledgement shall operate in accordance with the Nevada Gaming Control Board Act and regulations of the Nevada Gaming Commission promulgated pursuant thereto. Peter Eric Dunn 1991 number 1 life interest settlement and deed of acknowledgement shall operate in accordance with the Nevada Gaming Control Board Act and regulations of the Nevada Gaming Commission promulgated pursuant thereto. The P.E. Dunn 2007 family discretionary settlement and deed of acknowledgement shall operate in accordance with the Nevada Gaming Control Board Act and regulations of the Nevada Gaming Commission. And finally, Each settler, trustee, beneficiary, or other person associated with the settlement trust who has or obtains any approval from the Nevada Gaming Commission or Nevada Gaming Control Board shall be responsible for ensuring any successor or potential successor, trustee, beneficiary, or other person who may become associated with the settlement trust receives notice that the person is subject to the Nevada Gaming Control Board Act and regulations promulgated thereto, specifically including, without limitation, notice regarding approval requirements and transfer of interest requirements. Did that sound right?
That sounded perfect.
Spot on.
Except you said, I think there was one.
I'm going to handle the registration after.
Yeah, no. But you said team instead of term in the one of the Mohegan conditions.
Which one?
The first one.
Okay, I'll amend that.
It looks like Dag McKellar has something he needs to add.
Yes, just a point of clarification for the record. When Member Katsaros said Nevada Gaming Control Board Act, I think he meant Nevada Gaming Control Act.
I did indeed.
Thank you, Mr. McKellar.
Also, Member Katsaros, I believe you said the date was 1/4/2003, and it should be 2023.
2023. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Madam Secretary.
Member Katsaros?
Aye.
Chair Watkins?
Aye.
And then
Motion
we have
passes. Thank you.
we have to deal with the registration ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'll then move to approve the applications of registration as minority equity interest shareholders as read into the record by Secretary Ruber.
Madam Secretary.
Member Katsaros?
Aye.
Chair Watkins?
Aye. All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all for being here. Madam Secretary, this brings us to our last agenda item, public comment.
This item is placed on the agenda to give the public an opportunity to comment on gaming-related matters.
Anyone wishing to make a public comment, please step forward to the podium. Is there anyone in Carson City? Okay, seeing none here in Las Vegas or in Carson.
Quick comment. Unless I can find another meeting for Member Katsaros to attend between now and the end of the week, I think this is truly his last meeting.
Indeed, you're right. I lied last time. I didn't realize that.
It was great working with you when we were both agents, and it's been a great 4 years working with you as a board member, your term as board member. Thanks for a great 4 years. Thanks for your service to the board and to Nevada.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm not going to go through my speech like I did last time, but I'll echo what I said a couple of weeks ago. I loved working with all you guys. I'm going to miss all you guys. Thank you.
Yes, and Chief Hoffman, thank you for bringing that back to the forefront. We said bye to you last time, but we'll say bye to you again. And thank you for all of your service to Nevada and your term on the board. It was great having you as a college colleague, and you'll be missed.
I thank you. I appreciate it. I don't want to say anything else now.
Anyone else want to say anything else? Okay. All right. Thank you. So that will close our public comment section. And this concludes the special meeting of the Nevada Gaming Control Board. We are adjourned.